Hey, what's up? My name's Grant Kanoki. I'm a singer, songwriter, producer, and artist, and you're listening to Power 98.5.
Hey everybody, this is Nick Mayhew, three-time gold medalist and three-time world record holder, and you're listening to Power 98.5.
We don't play the social game. We are social. Power 98.5. You're listening to Power 98.5, powered by United Angels Dream, your number one resource for public relations, entertainment, and multimedia. Contact them today at unitedangelsdream.com.
Hi, this is Dan Aykroyd. He's progressive. He's beautiful. He's thoughtful. He's intelligent. He's powerful. He's positive. He is Stephen Cuoco on Power 98.5 Satellite Radio.
Empowering listeners from the US to the UK. Live on air with Stephen Cuoco.
I have one of the most, and I mean the most, impressive guests on today. I found him and met him on the Clubhouse app. Zack Werner. We're going to get right to it. I know we've gotten a lot of great response back, especially from music artists from here and all around the world. All seriousness, we've gotten a lot of people who really are interested to find out from an entertainment attorney, someone like Zack Werner. Not only is he an entertainment attorney, but he's a Canadian artist, he's a producer, he's a manager. He is, we're going to find out more about Lyric Find, what he's doing with the company. He was a judge on Canadian Idol. I love my Canadians. They are hands down one of the best people in the entire world. I have made the greatest and have the greatest friendships with Canadians. So with us today, live on air with Stephen Cuoco, from here and all around the world, Zack Werner, thank you for being with us today on Power 98.5 Satellite Radio.
It's a pleasure to be here, and it was nice meeting you the other day, and hopefully we have lots of interesting things we can share with people. So,
what I know of for a fact, and this is something that definitely goes amiss, and where I would like to start with you, and where you really impressed me in the room where we were in together on Clubhouse, is law. One of the questions I have is, when I think about entertainment law, when it comes to copyright, music, rights, is it the same across the board, or do you find that the law, and as it applies for music artists who really need to better understand and know their rights when it comes to copyright and intellectual property, is it the same as here in the States, or do you feel that there are certain differences that when a music artist is looking, whether they're in the UK or if they're located in Canada or the United States, what are the similarities and what are the differences when it comes to the law of intellectual property and copyright?
it's a good question. I want to say, first of all, I'm in-house counsel, right? So, and while I'm happy to give an overview, I don't think anybody listening at home should think I'm giving them individually legal advice, right? So I'm an in-house counsel. I'm head of business affairs at a multinational company. So, I do deal with international copyright on a really wide reach right now. If you're just talking about America, Canada, the UK, Australia, people that have laws that are based on a traditional, from the common law route and based upon the Anglo-Saxon ideals in the first place, the laws are quite similar. There are some differences. In America, they don't have a thing called neighboring rights, which is an extra part of the copyright that's payable to the people that actually played on the record as opposed to the person that wrote the song. So it's part of the copyright that is not collected in America. But in general, one of the things you have to realize is that, we have common law and then we have statute law. Common law is the ancient law of the land, and trespass and loitering and assault and a lot of these things that can be statutory under criminal law or something like that, but they are just the common law. But copyright doesn't exist under the common law. It's a weird thing. So copyright exists because there is a Copyright Act. And there's a Copyright Act in Canada, there's a Copyright Act in the UK, there's an EU brand new Copyright Act, and there's certainly a Copyright Act in America. And these things are changing because of the internet, right? And because of the way information is transmitted around the world. But all of these countries, especially in the West, are part of international copyright agreements. So while there are differences in how money is collected, how it's split up, a variety of things, the essence of copyright is basically the same: Canada, the US, UK. I'd say one, significant difference in the UK, in America, is that once you have put a song out in public, in other words, published it in some way, whether that was in a book or on a record or in a movie or in some way that you've made it public, there's a thing called mandatory mechanical licensing, which means, to make it really simple, once you've had your song and you recorded it and you put it out on record, anybody can get a license to record it themselves. So it's a mandatory thing. So a Beatles song, anybody can cover a Beatles song in the United States because it's already been out in the marketplace. So there are small quirky differences in different places, where in the UK and in Canada, you would need a license from the Mechanical Rights Society. But in America, you are guaranteed one. I mean, it gets so technical so fast, doesn't it, Steve?
It truly does. And you're absolutely correct, Zach. The law changes all the time. And what I've learned and what I was told by attorneys throughout is that when a law is made or presented, it's because either or most likely it was broken or infringed, and then they had to go ahead and put into place an act or to enact, if that's the right way to put it, to govern something, or to make it preventatives because there was suspect that there could be foolishness.
Sure. But I mean, to make a certain thing, that it sounds, this is the part that if you're a musician or you're in the music business, you have to understand. With every song that is released into the world, right, that's a copy. And when it's released, there are actually two copyrights. There's a copyright that exists in the recording, and that is a separate copyright unto itself. And there's a copyright in the song that is being recorded. And there will be different rights in each of those, and there will be different royalties that will be payable in each of those. And that's always got to be remembered, that there are two copyrights in every single sound recording.
Could you repeat those two again?
There's a copyright that exists when we go into the studio and we play in the studio and we record it, and somebody sings and somebody drums and somebody plays guitar, etc. A copyright now exists in that recording. And the word copyright is exactly what it sounds like. It's the right to make copies of it, right? And to restrict the making of copies. So there are royalties that are payable with regards to that copyright. But underlying that copyright, or part of it, is the song. And the copyright in that belongs to maybe the publisher, but upon its creation, it belongs to the people that wrote the song. So there's a copyright in the performance that is the recording, and there's a copyright in the song that is being recorded.
We're going to go...
It's actually that's pretty simple to think about.
It is, which leads us, and we're going to go into what you were really brought up something incredible, is lyric fine. And from memory, you had stated that lyrics is under mechanical.
The lyrics are, it is a mechanical representation. Mechanical just means it's manufactured in some way, right? Mm-hmm. So when you press a record, there's a mechanical royalty because a machine made a copy of the song, which would be different than a performance royalty because no machine made it. You just sang the song somewhere, right? So with us, we have the rights from over 10,000 publishers and have a catalog of our own of those songs that we have created as part of a database of about 5.4 million and growing. And that's not counting translations of those songs. We have a database that's that big. And so when a song appears, when you search a song on Google, the lyrics pop up. And when the lyrics pop up, that is a mechanical royalty, right? So there is a royalty that is payable, but it's not governed under the Copyright Act in most countries, I think in any country. So we negotiate a rate for that. In some things, there's under the Act, there will be a rate that's set by the statute. But with regards to the royalties that are payable to the songwriter from his lyrics being displayed, that's something that we negotiate with the individual publishers or the individual songwriters.
Now, what is your position with Lyric Find?
I am the head of, which I guess, we always got to deal with these words in corporate speak, right? Mm-hmm. So you can be a VP, a senior VP, or whatever. When you're the head of, means there's nobody on top of you. So I'm the head of business affairs and business development. So I look after our contracts and the negotiation on that side, although sometimes we use very senior outside lawyers if it's really something significant, or our corporate lawyers, because I don't do our tax work, for example. I do the contracts in those negotiations. And I'm the head of business development. So I am constantly on the look for new technology, new opportunities, new people to partner with, other places that we might not have thought of that our lyrics could go, that we can now find a way to go into partnership with other people or to license them our lyrics. An example would be a simple use of lyrics would be Google, right? That's very simple. It's slightly more complicated, where the lyrics are just displayed there. You type in the name of the song or some of the lyrics and the lyrics pop up. Slightly more complicated one would be synchronized lyrics, which would be when you're listening to Spotify and the lyrics come up on your phone in timed relation to the song. And we do that for Amazon, we do that for YouTube, we do that for Apple Music, we do it for a variety of people, and we do it internationally. So we do it with Vibe, which is a huge company in Korea, etc. Then you can get into other uses of lyrics. So there are various apps that are teaching people to speak another language that are using lyrics as a tool for doing that. We also work with a number of seniors residences in the United States in particular, where they have for people in the residence, they all have an iPad and they do sing along at their place. And so we provide the lyrics for them to do that. Question is, why do we exist? And that has to do with the fact that back in the day, when the internet was exploding, lyrics were an incredibly popular search item. Everybody was searching lyrics in different ways. They wanted to know the lyrics to their favorite song. They wanted to play along with them on their guitar, et cetera, et cetera. And all the sites that popped up felt they had found a loophole, that nobody was looking after that part of the copyright. So there were a ton of pirate sites, places like Metro Lyrics, AZ Lyrics, et cetera, and they were everywhere. And we were the first company to reach out to the publishers and say, hey, why don't we go and make sure these lyrics are correct? That's number one. And that the songwriters and the publishers are getting paid. So we became the premier company in the world originally because we had the license to these lyrics. And of course, you'd say, well, why didn't the publishers just go do it? Why didn't the record companies go do it? The problem was, as the internet exploded and Napster and other things beat the hell out of the music business, the record companies and particularly the publishers never created a digital database of their own lyrics, one that was searchable, one that could display instantly, one where you could search one word at a time, one that was synced up to the music. There was just too much volume there. So we did all the hard legwork of building the original catalog of these songs. And that's what put us in the position in the first place.
When we think about Instagram, especially TikTok, many people use lyrics or to show that within their posts. Do you or Lyric Find, do you work with these social media apps as well? I mean, do they pay royalties? Like, what is the layout with this?
Yeah, we work with a lot of them. I mean, we work with Deezer, we work with Amazon, we work with Apple Music, we work with a variety of different sources. Right now, TikTok is still up in the air, and sometimes those lyrics are provided directly through a license. TikTok's a different situation than, say, Spotify, because you're not looking at a playlist, right? So you're really looking at a creator at home creating things one lyric at a time. We're mostly providing lyrics to DSP, essentially called them digital service providers, that are using millions of lyrics a year. And while TikTok may be doing so, it's only using them one song at a time, one video at a time. So you're not getting the same kind of tonnage of use of lyrics there. But right now they haven't decided all of their issues, and we could get into what TikTok does pay and doesn't pay on royalties. It's a lot of that is very much up in the air. And to some extent, some of these services like Twitch go out and get a license directly from the publishers. And once again, because they're only dealing with one song at a time, not big playlists, there may not be the same kind of demand for lyrics involved. Spotify are with our competition. They were with another company that was one of our competitions, but isn't anymore. And, things come and go, and, we all go out there and bid as much as possible to try to dominate the market. And, the future that's coming, which everybody's going to have to deal with in our business, is translations. Mm-hmm. Because, and that's where we're trying to build up our database as fast and deep as possible, because some kid in Romania, loves Nicki Minaj and wants to see the lyrics on his phone in Romanian. And there you get into, there's two ways to create those translations. One is to have a user-generated lyric, which is Bobby sitting at home and he types the lyrics in, and then we get the lyrics from them. And hopefully they're synchronized, and hopefully they're accurate, and hopefully the spelling is right, and hopefully they've gotten all the writers right, et cetera, et cetera. But also quite often, the word in Romanian for my ride, I'm cruising in my ride. Well, how do you say that in Romanian, right? And if you take German as an example, the words are much longer and don't necessarily synchronize as well. So the idea of turning the whole world into a place where there are subtitles in the language of the choice of the listener, that's definitely a big part of the future, as is the metaverse and a number of other places. For me, it's a pretty exciting time to try to see where we're all going.
When I think about young artists and people that are up and coming or currently established, when we think about their name, their image, their identity, or the band's name, I'm aware of that there are record labels or certain management companies that would like to take ownership, or they own the name, or they own the person and their identity. What do you recommend for an artist or a band that's up and coming or established that's either considering signing with management or a record label? And what should they do to protect their name and their image before diving too deep, too quick into a contract that may or may not be in our best interest?
It's an interesting question. And it was much easier in a pre-digital world to control your name and likeness rights, and we have to separate that from the actual trademark, which is not copyright, but trademark, a different kind of intellectual property that's associated with the name of a band. And we can talk about that. I'm happy to get into it. But let's address the issue that you just raised in the first place. My number one rule is seek legal advice. Don't listen to some guy on the radio. If your career is something that you believe is going to happen, you have to prepare for success by getting good advice so that you can control what happens with all the various intellectual properties and elements of your career, because, if you're going to fail, it makes no difference. But if you succeed, you're definitely going to lose out from having not dotted all your I's and crossing all your T's. That being said, you also are going to be into a reality where you don't probably have a lot of bargaining power when you're first entering into the business. And people will say to you, management companies, record companies, this is our standard form contract. Everybody signs it. So it's not really negotiable. And, you know, everything is a contract, right? You know, and it's a contract when you get on the airplane, you have a contract with the people that are flying you there, and it's not really negotiable. You can't go up to the pilot and say, hey, it says here, if you're drunk and you crash the plane, I don't get any money. I'd like to negotiate that. So, you know, because you have no bargaining power whatsoever. So with regards to the music business, they're always telling young artists that they have no negotiating power, that it is a standard form contract. My reality is there is rarely no room for negotiation. Sometimes the only places where you cannot negotiate are contests. So with the Idol franchise, it was virtually impossible for contestants to negotiate what happened with their name and likeness rights, et cetera, et cetera. My number one advice is your management company doesn't need those rights. And you always have to think, do they need the rights? The management company doesn't need the right to your name. They don't need the right to your image. They don't need the right to control the trademarks involved in your process. There's nothing in it for them. They're getting a commission from the money that's earned. So if they're asking for it, I would not do it. It makes no sense whatsoever. Also, unless people are spending money to enhance the value of those things, to enhance the value of your name, to enhance the value of your likeness in various things for T-shirts and your logos and your trademark of the name of the band. Unless they're spending money to do it, I wouldn't give them rights either. And, you know, it could be money in the sense of expertise and opportunity and, you know, and sweat equity. But in general, unless they're spending money, I don't give them the rights. With regards to the name of the band, listen, Morris Day and the Time, you know, are being stopped from going on the road as Morris Day and the Time because Prince's estate owns the rights to the words Morris Day and the Time. You know, I mean, I know Prince built the band and Morris was his original drummer, but that sounds like a bad deal to me. You should, with regards, you know, you can end up blowing a lot of money doing trademark protection, but you can spend a little bit of money and make a deal between your bandmates, a partnership as to what happens with the name of the band. What happens if somebody gets fired? What happens if somebody quits? You know, what happens when the new guy comes in? Does he get rights in the name? And you can go to a lawyer, and really, while you know, arguably each need a different lawyer, I would just make a partnership agreement with regards to those rights. Do I want to go and register that trademark all over the world? I would look at it one territory at a time, decide where we're going and when we're going into that territory and when it's going to really be of value, you know, before I would start spending that kind of money. As to your photo and all of those things, one thing's for sure, you only have to license them the rights in association with what they're selling. So if they're selling records and your photo's going to be on it, the record company needs those rights for doing that. If you're going on a tour, the people that are doing the tour need the rights for making the posters and doing those various things. But you can limit those things to specific periods of time. And above and beyond that, you want approval of every image that they use. And I know I'm going on a bit, you know, so make sure you have approval of those things so they don't end up using photographs that you find are embarrassing and that you don't want to see the light of day. The biggest issue that comes up now is everybody's got a phone. Everybody's shooting a video at your concert. Everybody's taking photos of you on the street. The one night that you hit a bunch of lousy notes, that's the video that pops up on Facebook or on YouTube, and you're stuck with it forever. But unfortunately, in a digital world, we just cannot control those things anymore. That was a lot of information in a very short period of time, Steve.
It's perfect information, which brings me to my next question. I was listening to or in a room listening to a group, and there was someone who was really passionate, several people really passionate about copyright and trademarking, and, you know, made reference and a strong statement that, you know, you better read my bio because I have the trademark next to it or copyright next to it. What I have found within my almost 30 years working in public relations and media is that attorneys, copyright, you know, also entertainment attorneys such as yourself who have informed, notified, and warned talent that even if you were to trademark and copy something here in the States, where most people miss is they assume it is global. However, several attorneys had stated and even advised that if you were to trademark or copy something in the United States, that you would need to do the same in other jurisdictions, because if not, let's say if someone starts a company called Don't Let Me Down Music Group, what is your thought of somebody copywriting and or trademarking Don't Let Me Down Music Group in the States? Can it still be taken and used overseas in another country where the U.S. has no jurisdiction? Or what is the problem? Because there are some issues where people have a misconception that when they register a trademark or copyright here, that it is going to be abided by throughout the entire world.
Right. Well, and I appreciate that you're being careful when you're, using those terms and you're saying trademark or copyright, right? Because the law with regards to trademark and the law with regards to copyright are very different things. And there are international trademark agreements, and say, for example, the entire copyright agreements. So I said, copyright agreements, so the entire EU would be governed under one agreement, even though they have individual performing rights organizations and mechanical rights organizations. They have a convention that they have agreed to, like a treaty with regards to copyright. And trademark, let's just start with trademark. Trademark, there is little doubt, while there are some agreements between one country and the next with regards to a registration in one country, may hold some water somewhere else. First of all, if you're going to carry on business under a name, you have to create a business that is incorporated to use that name, or at least register as a style of carrying on business. And if you're just doing a business style registration, that can just be statewide or province-wide or county-wide. It may not even give you the rights to that name across the country. With regards to registering it and if you want to do international business under that name, you probably need to go wherever they do the registrations in your individual country or your individual state and incorporate a company that in Canada, we don't have all the different LLCs, et cetera, that you have in the United States, but we only have provincial and federal corporations. But you have to go and do that registration to allow you to have the rights to use that name internationally. Then you get into the trademark issue, because just because you've incorporated a company under that name doesn't mean you own the trademark in it. And a trademark is only worth something where it's registered as a trademark, and you may very well have to go country by country by country and register that trademark over and over again and drop another 1,000 and another 1,000. And you may run into people that are using it before you. But a trademark is always specific. It's specific to what you're doing for a living. So if you're making records and you're making T-shirts and you're making posters and you're doing videos, et cetera, you may own that trademark specifically for those activities, but not own it for starting an airline, for example. And you can try to register it for things that you are not doing at this time. And you think about Richard Branson trademarking the word virgin for all the things that Richard Branson does. And he certainly could not have projected those things at the time that he started the record company. So then what we look at is what we call a common law trademark, which is being well known and other people doing a thing called passing off, using your good name for them to make money. And that could be international goodwill associated with your name that is there at common law and is there before you've done the registration, and people cannot jump in and use it because you're already well known in the marketplace. But that gets complicated as we go along. But these things have happened, where if Coca-Cola is not available in Sri Lanka, let's say, and they just haven't gotten to it yet, and somebody starts making Coca-Cola there, and says that they've registered the name, and then you get into copyright versus registration things, and that's when, you really need a good trademark lawyer, a good, to get involved in these issues to try to control it. It goes on with domain names all day, every day. when the internet blew up, every clown in the world went out and registered every name they could possibly think of. So you go out and you register the NewYorkYankees.com before the Yankees could get there, or you do NewYorkYankees.net or NewYorkYankees. Whatever, ITIA. In Canada we have .ca, and in the internet it becomes really difficult. And when a new social media site pops up and becomes popular, then once again people are registering names and getting the rights to being the real this or the real, and that's why people are called the real Donald Trump, et cetera, is because those are the names that were left over because somebody else already had registered the name Donald Trump, and that gets you out, and that skirts the law of trademark. So, and it's into a very iffy thing, although there are now boards that administer that and that you can bring an action to try to get back the name, but it could take you forever to do so. So it's, but you definitely can get the names back these days, but it's very tricky out there. And anybody who tells you they know 100% of the answer, you got to deal with it one situation at a time, and look at the fact pattern. It's the same thing with looking at copyright and this whole debate as to whether or not I own the copyright if I didn't register. And once again, that's, to me, I have a simple answer, but, I've sat there with people who have 30 years of music business experience. I did it the other day on Clubhouse. Some guy who's won 2 Emmys told me that if you don't register your copyright in America, you don't own it. I said, that's absolutely untrue. And, there was just no way he was going to have that. And I'm like, well, I've practiced law. I've been, in the music business legal side for 35 years. So, you can tell me that you know better than I do, but I'm going to go with my version of it.
Why do you believe that person was adamant to not accept what you had to say?
Well, I think, we all get the information we have and we carry on our business under the presumption of what we believe to be true. I don't know, man. Like, there's people believe all kinds of nonsense, and Clubhouse is the world where all kinds of nonsense, that is patently false becomes true. So, and you got to be careful if you read it on a website that collects money on behalf of people, royalty collection agencies or small record companies or small distributors. I don't think they try to mislead people, but the wording of what they have on their site that's supposed to explain it to you can, be really technical, can kind of, slide through when they say, we register the copyright of all of our assets. It's like, yeah, but you didn't have to register the copyright. Well, they didn't say they had to. They just said they do. So, it's really easy to get disinformation. One place you should never worry about getting disinformation is from your lawyer.
Agree. Totally agree.
Unless you try to hire a real estate lawyer to do your band's work.
Here's why you are here with us today. And I want to thank everyone for joining us. We have Zack Werner. He is a Canadian artist, producer, entertainment lawyer, a manager. He was a judge on Canadian Idol for several years, several seasons. And what I really felt and what I still feel is your passion to be very neutral to where you stay in your own lane. You share to the best of your ability the facts that you know of the law. Once again, that ever so changes, especially when someone is breaking a law or someone or a company perceives that someone could break it, laws are put into place. When I think about music supervisors, what is your experience with dealing with music supervisors? And do you have any recommendations for music artists to contact music supervisors and having a really good catalog and everything that they need in order to get their works within television, film, video games. I know that is a big subject right now, to where there's not a lot of information. There are music supervisors that will go online. They will offer information, but yet at the same time, what I have found is music supervisors are very much like producers and directors. They don't mind if you reach out, but it can be very, very daunting for music artists to obtain placement and to focus on something larger than just streams. What do you recommend within this arena?
Well, certainly it's a growing area all the time, because there's a soundtrack to everything right now, and it definitely is a place that you can generate some serious income if you can get yourself into that world. Everybody thinks they're a sync artist, but the reality is that if you watch television and you watch movies, the aside from people that are doing scoring, which is a different situation entirely, for the most part, these guys, the music supervisors, are looking for finished songs, and they just like the snippet of the song, and they put together the soundtrack and they pitch it to the director, and the director chooses based upon what the snippets are. So they're not really necessarily looking for custom written or work for hire that's for that movie. They're more looking for either A-level, B-level, C-level, or D-level songs that go with the TV show. Obviously, if it's CSI or whatever, they're looking at A-level songs, and then you work your way down the ladder for what they're looking for. And quite often, what they're looking for in a lot of things, and I find, is things that sound home recorded. So, that sound natural, like out of tune guitars with slightly out of tune voices, because it goes with the scene. So there is no one size fits all solution to what you should be trying to produce in order to get into the sync market. Generally, for most of us, we should just write the best music we possibly can, and then hope that somebody finds it, and not just finds it. So then you're asking the question, how do they find it? And what do you need when they do find it? There's tons of good information out there, whether it's at Sync Tank or Song Trader, which are really good websites that I happen to know. That can't in any way necessarily, promise you that something's going to happen, or Disco, which is going to, but there's lots of them out there. The odds that something's going to come out of that probably directly have to do with the kind of work that you put into it and the kind of effort that you make. So there are sync conventions all over the world all the time. Probably worth attending, not thinking you're going to get discovered, but thinking you're going to get educated, thinking you're going to shake some hands, you're going to kiss some babies, you're going to get to know some people. You also have to look locally in your own market for guys who are doing commercials, guys who are doing short films, guys who are scoring, who are putting on a play, any kind of show where you can show off your goods, right? And just continue to build a resume and find the low-hanging fruit of opportunity for yourself, right? And get your things out there. Make sure you have non-vocal mixes. Make sure you have what we call your stems, the separated tracks. But quite often, the non-vocal version of your song, you should not just have a reel, which we call a greatest hits of your own sync music, but you can have that stuff up on TikTok as the soundtrack to what people are doing on TikTok. You can get that to people who are playing games on Twitch and get it up there, so that the more places that it gets exposure, the more times it gets heard, the bigger your resume becomes. Because if all of a sudden you have a whole bunch of songs that some gamer is using on Twitch and millions of people are listening to that song, you now have that as a calling card when you get to the higher level music supervisor. Do what you can. Look for novel and inventive ways to get your music some exposure, some credibility, because just knocking on the door with your stuff is not going to do it. It's a long process, and I'm not going to sit here and recommend one website over the next that promises to get you sync placements. But if you look on that website and they say, we've got 4 million songs here, well, yours is now song number 4,000,001, and that may not be the best solution to getting yourself through the door.
What would be your best recommendation for anyone who is looking to work with a distribution publishing company to get their music out there?
Well, the first thing you should realize is that the distribution company is not going to build your audience. So unless you have a plan for, and the wherewithal, either the financing, the touring dates, whatever it is, just getting your stuff distributed by TuneCore, DistroKid, CD Baby, The Orchard, and you're not going to get with The Orchard unless you're a record company, but, one of those sources, unless you are already doing or are working with a manager or production company or some resource or are incredibly independently wealthy, the distribution unto itself, while it's nice, it's kind of insignificant in the overall package. And when you start pushing on the distribution side and you don't have your marketing and your promotion and your social media plan involved, and you don't have all of those things lined up, and you haven't already got a mailing list of 5,000 emails, people that are ready to buy your record or to stream your record, then you're putting the apple before the cart before the horse. You've got to really have a plan. Why am I doing this? Who am I trying to reach? Is there a real audience? And what am I doing that's going to reach that audience? The distribution in this day and age is easy peasy. The major label level is a totally different animal. But the indie distribution thing is simple, and they'll all get it to Spotify, and they'll get it to Pandora, and they'll get it to Deezer, and they'll get it to iTunes, and they'll do all that stuff for you. But you've got to figure out how you're going to get people to come and listen, right? So that's number one. And they do have, a lot of these distributors have a la carte services where you can hire them to do some marketing, and you can hire them to do some promotion, and you can hire them to service the playlist at Spotify and try to get you on there. But really, you have to have the story to tell that makes the Spotify playlist interested. You can't just throw it against the wall and hope for the best. You have to be playing shows live. You have to have videos out in different places on different platforms, whether it's on Facebook stories or you're running some Facebook ads or you've done all the great work you possibly can on TikTok. You've got to be creating a story that makes it necessary to pay attention to what you're doing. As for publishers, for the most part, unless you're a pure songwriter, are in the business of collecting your money as well as possible on a worldwide basis. In the rare circumstance, you're purely a songwriter. And in that situation, a publisher can do a lot for you, but only if you have two things. One is hits, right? And hits are very few and far between, and they are hard to define. And secondly, you have to have people doing your music, not just you. So you have to have gone and met people at clubs who are playing and say, hey, man, would you like to cover my song? You have to shop around at the studios and say, hey, I'd love to come down and play you guys some songs if you're looking for a new track. You have to co-write with other musicians. You have to get your material out in the marketplace so the publisher goes, well, you may not be a hit artist right now, but you've got songs on 27 records, and each one of those songs is a business unto itself that's carrying your brand and your value out into the marketplace and establishing a name for you. So, there's a lot of different paths. But if some indie publisher says, some guy just down the road says, I would like to be your publisher, you better ask him what he's doing with those songs, because there's a lot of sharks out there who are just signing publishing everywhere they possibly can and building up a catalog in case one day one of those people has a hit. And that's not an answer. You have to, you only want to work with people who are taking songs that are hits and making them into giant hits.
What is your best recommendation? And you answered a question that I was going to ask you. So about like the Spotify playlist, Apple playlist reaching out. What's been happening, especially a lot during a pandemic, and just if you're open to share with me your advice for those that are listening and that will be listening to this interview. When there are music artists or people in the industry that are not entertainment attorneys, or they may be entertainment attorneys, but the ones that I know of are not entertainment attorneys that are developing these programs that are like $9,000, but they're offering it for $19.95. And what they do is they put you in front of music supervisors and help you with
Or so they
sync
say.
licensing. What's that?
Or so they say.
Or so they say. Here's the biggest thing, and this was I got a couple phone calls to seek advice as to what they should do. And I ran down the question, are they entertainment attorneys? Do they have legal jurisdiction to do this? Is this a scheme? Like, why do you need to pay $2,000 to do or to take courses just to get access to music supervisors when you should be able to just Google it, or they can offer that for free in conjunction to maybe setting something up. I don't get too much into program things. What do you recommend for these music artists to do, knowing that this is a fraction of a cent that they make? Not everyone has $2,000 to pay for access to music supervisors and weekly YouTube tutorials. Is this really in its best sense for someone to financially take on as a responsibility in the hope of being discovered, or are these just schemes?
Well, the fact of the matter is that a lot of this information is available. If you just want to know how to do it and how it's done, go buy Sync Licensing for Dummies. I mean, I don't even know there's such a book, but I'm sure there is. And there's a million ways to learn the ABCs of it. I highly recommend a book by a lawyer called Donald Passman, which is Everything You Need to Know About the Music Business. I think it's in the 11th edition, Everything You Need to Know About the Music Business. I have it on my desk, so do a lot of other people who look after the legal side, because it answers virtually all the questions that you basically need to know. It's all you need to know about the music business, just so I don't get that wrong. I just looked at my copy. But listen, anybody who promises you that for X dollars, they are going to make a certain thing happen, like they're going to get you sync licenses, then why do they need your $2,000? I used to work with an artist who had a part-time job, and his part-time job was he'd put an ad in the newspaper, back in the day when we had newspapers, that said, send $1 in a self-addressed stamped envelope, and I will send you 100 ideas for becoming a millionaire. And he would send you back a letter that said, run an ad in the newspaper telling people to send you $1. Anyways, do you understand? That was his entire thing, was there was nothing. Nobody can guarantee you sync licenses. No guy who has the quality and respect of music supervisors is a guy who's out there running one of these programs and getting paid up front to do so. It's just, it's all based upon your reputation and the respect that people have for you. And when the guy who's taking money from unknown songwriters is taking $2,000, whatever it is, to go and send their stuff around, the sync license guys see them coming a million miles away. They do, like, every time they sign somebody up, they send the material to the exact same music supervisors. So unless they're sending them hits all the time that are getting picked up for TV shows and commercials and whatever, then when that guy shows up again, they're not even paying attention. You're only as good as the quality of the work that you're representing. And if he's representing anybody with $2,000, then that's what he's known for, right? Any port in a storm. It's just not possible. I would say your money is way better spent. Yes, there are conferences and places that you can learn the ABCs of it, and it's really important. Your best bet, go hang around in bars where people who make movies are, and play gigs in those bars and get people to know you. Shake hands, have a beer, be a good guy, and slowly get your music to the right people. Nobody has some magic wand that is going to say, you give me $2,000, I get you a sync license. It's just not possible.
I want to reiterate your recommendation. All you need to know about the music business, 10th edition. I'm looking at it right now. It is available on Amazon. There are other platforms where you can purchase this book. It is on sale right now for $22.99, originally $35. You can get it on audiobook, paperback, or Kindle. I'm going to definitely purchase this book, Zach. And I greatly appreciate the recommendation on that. And to the listeners, is there any advice that you can offer that I have not asked that you feel is absolutely important for anyone that is starting out in the music industry, already seasoned within this business, who may consider wanting to become an entertainment attorney like yourself, or to get more involved, into producing, doing the things that you have a tremendous amount of education and experience in? What is your recommendation?
Well, first of all, it's the music business. So, one thing that people are talking about all the time is, when and how do I get a manager? You get a manager when the manager can commission money or foreseeably commission money within the near future. That's something to always remember. You don't need a manager if you're not making a living. I think my biggest recommendation is to realize what you don't know and to listen and to go and get really good feedback from people that are qualified to give you good feedback on the material that you're working on the artists that you're working with, and listen to what they are saying, especially those people that are not your cousin, are not your mother, and are not your artist's girlfriend. Go out and get real reactions. If you're playing shows, or the artists you're working with are playing shows or are doing live streams, and they went from having 200 people the first night to having their mom and their 3 cousins and their kitten the 4th time they do it, then something's wrong. And you have to look for solutions to that, because while I know it's your music and I know it's your art and you don't want to think there's a right and there's a wrong, we are going into business. We are trying to sell it. So if it it's like making the same shitty cheeseburger over and over again and wonder why nobody's coming back to your restaurant. You have to figure out what's right and what's wrong when you're making this thing happen. So that, I say, is fundamental. Secondly, you really should, or my other piece of advice is realize, and this is what Clive Davis at a great speech I heard him give one time talked about, the 3 things that make things work in the music business. And we can all say you just have to be popular on YouTube, or popular on Spotify, or popular on TikTok, and it'll work. Yes, it is plausible that you could do something really wacky on TikTok and have one of your songs do something, but whether that could turn into a career, odds are it can't. Doing one crazy thing and having one thing stream, and record companies are generally not interested in those people. What Clive Davis said is it's uniqueness, star power, and repertoire. Repertoire are the songs that you are doing, that they are hit songs for you and for the right artist. Make sure and work really hard to get good input from studio people, from people who work at radio stations, from DJs, from fans, from posting your stuff on Bandcamp, from posting your stuff on SoundCloud. Get good feedback, because you're going in a direction that songs are going to be hits before you just commit yourself to spending a whole bunch of money in the studio, or just plunking it out over and over again on Spotify and over again hitting up those playlists. Make sure the songs are hits, and if they're not hits, find great people to work with, co-writers, co-producers, people that know what they're doing. Secondarily, it's uniqueness. Whatever you do, you have to think outside the box, even if you're doing something that is a staple, whether it's hip hop or whether it's country music or whatever it is. You have to figure out what it is about you that is unique. And I know you can say that you see a whole bunch of female vocalists out there that are having hits that don't seem unique, and you can't tell the difference between Demi Lovato and Ariana Grande. But you know what? I can, and the people that are experts in the business, they can. You must do something that they say, I need this one artist. And sometimes that takes some deep diving into what you're doing to figure it out. And Ed Sheeran, there's a complicated thing. Here's this nerdy little redheaded guy with an average kind of voice and a kind of just okay guitar player, but he figured out all these unique things, whether it was looping, whether it was writing songs in multiple genres for multiple other artists. So he was in, working with all kinds of people, and they were finding out just what a genius songwriter he was. Whether it was writing about difficult topics early on, like A-Team, guy was really delving into things to establish a unique position in the music business. And the third one is the star power. And some of us got it and some of us don't. And when you don't, you have to look at, how do I look? What is the image I'm presenting? What are the things that I can bring to the table that may define me in some way? It could be that you define yourself as the nerdiest person on earth or the tallest person on earth, but you have to find something that makes people say, oh, that guy's a star. Because they want to be with you. They want to emulate you. They want to hear what you have to say next because you're a star. Stars don't grow on trees, but you can look at what you're doing and figure out what you're missing on that star power kind of side, because it's really important. Those are my big three. And I stole them from Clive Davis, which is a great source to steal things from.
Well, for what it's worth, you hit every gem, every note, every key in this interview. You are more than welcome to come back on anytime to talk about whatever you would like to talk about. I would also like to remind everyone, by recommendation, I'm going to be purchasing this book by Donald S. Passman, All You Need to Know About Passman, right?
Yeah.
All You Need to Know About the Music Business. It is available on Amazon. Let's see here. I was looking to see if there was any questions, if we had time to take on any questions. We probably will do that the next time you're on with us here on Live on Air with Stephen Quirkle.
If I can, just for 1 second, I just want to say once again, so I work for Lyric Find. We're a really interesting company, and we are interested in indie artists. We're interested in people with catalog. We're interested in people who work in all kinds of genres. You can always email content@lyricfind.com if you want to talk about making sure that your lyrics are represented in our database, because it's not just about the nickels and dimes that you make from that. It's also from the kind of marketing and promotion that you get from having your lyrics pop up. And there's all kinds of links that Google or Deezer or Amazon, or Apple Music put next to your name in your lyrics when you search. So, and if you're going to have some kind of a hit on TikTok or a hit on Spotify, it's really important to get those lyrics up there. If you're a manager, if you're a small record company, if you're a publisher, lyricfind.com, www.lyricfind.com. We are definitely interested in getting your music lyrics onto our site.
I appreciate that very much, Zach. I appreciate you. Looking to see if there's we're going to see if we can get one question in, if possible, just trying to find out. Within that, once again, please go and get the book by Donald S. Passman, All You Need to Know About the Music Business, 10th edition. And we're going to hit some questions later. This was too good. It went by so quick. I can't believe it. One last question I have for you.
Sure.
When there are people on Clubhouse or any other social media apps, and even people who are trying to, have a so-called radio station that are out there charging musicians to play their tracks to get people's opinions. I always say, do it for free. Don't use friends or family. Find people that are very neutral, to do a blind assessment on your music. What are your thoughts about people charging musicians 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 bucks, especially on Clubhouse, where it's illegal to do it because they don't have a reporting, the API where they can report it. So, just to let you know, if you're on Clubhouse and you're acting like a radio station or you're playing music, it's illegal. And I spoke to Sound Exchange about it because I wanted to do live music drops to do my radio show through Clubhouse. And both BMI ASCAP and Sound Exchange said, no, it's illegal. You cannot do it unless you can get the API, the reporting of it, which Clubhouse or any many of these apps have to legally do. So with that, there are a bunch of rooms on Clubhouse. There are people who so-called have radio stations that aren't really licensed to even be operational, but they're charging crazy amount of money for music artists to pay to receive a critique, which I find is a bit ridiculous. What do you recommend about going in that direction for these music artists to be doing that?
Well, everything old is new again, right? So it doesn't matter how we change to social media or change to digital platforms, whatever we do. This game of charging people to showcase or to get their material played in front of so-called business executives or A&R people, this game has been around for forever. So if the A&R guy needed to pick up the extra dough for hanging around a room on Clubhouse, and listening to people and splitting money, you got to realize that's the business he's in. He's not in the business of signing new artists. He's in the business of hanging around on Clubhouse, Is there the odd circumstance in which these things can work? Well, I think about it. I did the World Idol show, where we had the winners of all the Idol franchises come together, and Simon Cowell and I both judged. I judged in Canada for 6 years. We never charged anybody to come and do it, so figure that one out. You got showcased on our show, 2 million plus of an audience every time you performed on the show. There was no charging involved in it. Sometimes there's some administration fee. There's the songwriter site, Unsigned Only. It's a huge international site with real credentials, with real judges. As to whether or not anything happens as a result of that, I don't think very much, but at least there's a real prize at the end of the rainbow. They do give away real money. In general, you get what you pay for. If some guy says, I have a radio station on Clubhouse and all of these people come there and they listen to things, ask him who the 3 people are who got major label record deals from having done so. And his answer is going to be nobody. If it sounds too good to be true, it's too good to be true.
I appreciate that. Seriously, thank you. And do you want to give anyone a shout out? Who would you like to give a shout out to?
Who, me? Oh my goodness. I'm not so sure. To be honest, right now we're involved in, I'm in the middle of, we work with several teams of creators that are based in Ukraine. And, those people who've gone from, one day doing a lot of business together to the next day, they and their family are now refugees and, just hoping that things get back to normal there. So if I could give a shout out to anybody right now, it would be to those people with friends and family in that part of the world. A lot of my family comes from that part of the world, and that peace and sanity comes to that part of the universe, and that families from Ukraine can get back to their normal lives without this horrible terror that they're dealing with right now. That's my shout out.
I appreciate that. And once again, go to lyricfind.com. It has a wealth of information. lyricfind.com. Zack, thank you so much for being with us today. I hope you're willing to come back on again. Definitely would like to get you some good questions, maybe some people to come on live to ask you themselves. Really what you're doing is incredible. The day that I found you, you offered a wealth of information. I felt very confident and comfortable knowing that what you shared is professional, but yet at the same time, holding responsible to that person to know what is in their best interest, and that is to seek legal advice where need be before moving forward, doing anything and working with anyone. And just so everyone knows, Lyric Find, the clients they've worked with is Amazon Music, Deezer, Google, YouTube Music, and the list goes on and on. Is there anything else about Lyric Find and what you're doing, Zack, in the music industry that people should know about before we close out?
Well, one of the coolest things that's going on in Lyric Find right now is the move into the automotive space. So that's really fascinating. These infotainment systems in cars are coming fast and furious. And as we get into self-driving cars, et cetera, you're going to be able to do more and more things in your automobile. And we're providing lyrics to the information, the infotainment system that comes up on the screens for Mercedes and Audi, and you don't get any bigger than those two brands. And we work with Grace Note and Xperia, who are two of the biggest companies in the world at providing that kind of metadata. And my friends, if you are musicians and you don't know what metadata is, you got a real problem. So do some research on metadata. And if you're a musician and you think you know everything about metadata, you're in real trouble. There's always more to know about metadata. It is the information that is included in your recordings and on your records so that the money gets from the table to your pocket. Metadata is what's going on.
Do you want to come back on and have a quick conversation about that?
Let's leave it for today because I am now officially 3 minutes late for my board meeting. So you're a real pro, and it's been great to talk to you, and we'll do it again sometime. Just send me a message. I'm yours anytime you want me.
Perfect. Thank you, Zack, for being with us today. Zack, if you got to go, please, I don't want to keep you any longer. This episode will re-air tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. I want to thank everyone for tuning in from here and all around the world. I'm Stephen Cuoco, and you're listening to Live on Air with Stephen Cuoco on Power 98.5 Satellite Radio.
Friend us on your socials and let's connect.